Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today. Today we have Matt Perko here with us to talk to us about the UC Santa Barbara Visual Identity System, so that's very exciting. Before we jump right into it, we're just going to briefly go over who we are. We're coming to you as SB Creative Lab today. And so without further ado, really briefly, our agenda for today is we'll go over who we are, and then we'll jump into the workshop. Afterwards, you have an opportunity to ask some questions, and we can go over anything you're wondering about or have thoughts on regarding the workshop. And then afterwards, we'll be just briefing some upcoming events with our organization before encouraging you to stay connected with us. So who are we? We are SB Creative Lab, and we are, I would say, a fairly new design organization here at UC Santa Barbara. We just started up in the fall quarter, and essentially we are here really to build a design community, be it virtually right now because of our current situation, but we offer workshops and also some smaller design challenges for you to get started and sort of challenge yourself to hone in and sort of develop some basic design skills. I'll talk about a little bit later, but we're currently actually in the midst of an editorial illustration and also a graphic design challenge. So we really encourage you to be participating in that form. But besides that, there are a lot of different opportunities to stay connected, and we'll actually encourage you to hop onto some certain platforms at the end of this presentation. And today we have Matt Perko with us. Matt's actually a senior web designer here at UC Santa Barbara's Office of Public Affairs and Communications. He has tons and tons of experience as a self-taught designer, and so that brings a really interesting perspective to us today. I know many of you in the audience here are also aspiring designers, and I know at UC Santa Barbara, even though we don't necessarily have a design major, there's still lots of opportunities and different ways for you to get involved, and hopefully Matt can share some tips about that as well. And with that, I will actually turn the mic over to him and he can share a little bit more about himself.
Excellent. Thank you, Esther. Let me just get my technology happening here, get my presentation going. I will share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you can see this. So yeah, thank you. My name is Matt Perko, Senior Web Designer for Public Affairs and Communications. Just to give you a little clarification, most people aren't that well versed in all of the different departments and divisions at UCSB, but Public Affairs and Communications is kind of the central communications office. We don't really have a very unified communications strategy at UCSB. We're working on it, but Public Affairs handles the current, which is news.ucsb.edu. We handle all the media relations, and we administer the central social media channels, your central Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as ucsb.edu, which through the course of working here over the last 5 years, I've come to find out that most current active students don't ever visit ucsb.edu. So if you haven't visited it, it's a really wonderful place to see this visual identity system in its full glory. And it was actually kind of our signature piece that launched the new identity. So I just kind of want to talk a little bit about myself to give you a background of how I got here to this university and how I got into this profession, which I think a lot of you will find interesting. As Esther mentioned, I am self-taught, and graphic design was not something I ever thought I would do. Wasn't anything that I thought I would, as a child, never crossed my mind. And I'll actually, let me advance my slide here. So let's just jump right in. If I had to describe myself today, I wear a lot of different hats. I'm a musician at heart, and that's what I started with, but I'm also a graphic designer. I'm a photographer. I'm a husband, and I'm also a father. And this is kind of actually in order here. This is the timeline of my journey. When I was 3 years old, I got my first drum set. And my parents had to buy me a drum set because I was destroying all of the pots and pans and wooden spoons in the house. And it just seemed like I was just born to do that. And, growing up, that's all I ever did was play music, listen to music, play piano, play drums. I started learning to read music in elementary school, like a lot of us do. You get the recorder. And then I was asked what instrument I wanted to play. And fourth or fifth grade. And of course I said drums. And so, that there began my journey of musical education, and it just never stopped. And in many ways, I guess you could say I was a child prodigy, because I started performing professionally at 13 and started my music career. And all throughout high school, I was playing music professionally. And so, like I said, I never, graphic design was never on my radar in any way. And in fact, I had kind of a negative experience with visual arts growing up. I had art teachers that kind of, favored kids that had natural talent, and who were motivated. And, being a musician, I had never really taken visual arts seriously. So I was kind of overlooked in all of the art programs that I participated in. So just kind of made me feel like, well, I'm not talented, so I guess I'll stick to music. Since then, and over the course of my life, I really learned what I think talent really is. And I'll just share this really quickly. And I hope I don't go off on too many tangents. Um, but um, I think talent really, I don't think talent exists, at least in the way we think of it. I think people who are talented are just extremely passionate, and they just work really hard. And when you're passionate about something, it's not work. You're just driven to learn and to study and to practice and do things. And so, the kids who were talented in art have probably grown up, really loving to draw and doing it the same way I was playing music. Um, and so they were considered talented, and I felt that I wasn't talented. And it's something that I've learned, over time, that it really is passion. And that passion for me for visual arts didn't hit me until I was 19. Um, and this was, I'm quite a bit older than most of you. So this may come as a shock, but I grew up before there was the internet, and before there were websites. And it wasn't until I was 18 or 19 that it was, just starting to be commonplace that everyone had an internet connection. And, still not even everyone had a personal computer at home. I was lucky that as a kid, my parents bought us a Commodore 64, which you've probably never heard of either, which is an ancient dinosaur computer. So I did grow up with a computer, and I had an interest in computers on the side. And then when I was 19, I had a friend who was kind of a hobby graphic designer, and she built her own website. And I was like, wow, you can do that now. You can build websites. That's incredible. And so I think, probably like many of you, I started with a pirated version of Photoshop. She had a pirated version of Photoshop, and she gave it to me. And this is Photoshop version 5, which will just let you know how old I am. So Photoshop hadn't been around that long. Um, and so I opened up Photoshop thinking, oh, cool, I'm going to design a website. And I took one look at the interface, and it was just, there's so much going on in there. And if you've never worked with it before, and never gone down that route, it's just, mesmerizing. I had no idea what was going on. Um, so it was quite a learning curve, but, I had no pressure. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just having fun. And, for about a year, I played around in Photoshop, and this was also at the golden age of internet tutorials, when you could go on the internet and find blog posts by people of, here's how to do this thing in Photoshop, here's how to do that thing. And so I just started scouring the internet and just following these tutorials, learning how to do everything I could. Um, and it just was, like I said, it was fun. It was really exciting. At the same time, I was working as a professional musician. So my network of friends and colleagues were all musicians. They started to see that I had developed some skills with Photoshop, and it was, naturally the next step was, can you design a CD cover? Um, and this is an important point that I'll share with you as well, that throughout my career, and I think a big part of what's led me to where I am today, is that I've never said, no, I can't do something. I just said, sure. And then I figure out how to do it. So, a friend said, can you design a CD cover? And this is me, who I barely just made my first terrible website. Of course I can make a CD cover. I didn't even know what CMYK was, let alone all of the things that go into offset printing, but I just said, sure, I'll do it. And I embarrassed myself terribly in front of, printers that expected a professional graphic designer, and they got me, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I figured it out. And, that's one way to learn, is to just be fearless and jump in there and make the mistakes. And, when you're working with other people, and they explain to you, no, that's not how you do things, then you start to learn. But that was a really revealing, that first CD cover really revealed to me how much I didn't know. And so at that point I said, well, I'm enjoying doing this. I don't want to be embarrassed anymore. I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to get some books. And I'm going to understand what it is that I'm trying to do here. And so I did. I just, I went to the library and read every book that they had on design. Some of the classics, some of what were new Photoshop books and Illustrator books and InDesign books. Well, at that time it was PageMaker. And just really dove in head first. The great thing is, as a musician, you have all day long with nothing to do. Most of the time, the gigs that I were playing would be at 9, 10 at night. So it was like, wake up whenever you want. You're your own boss. Sit around all day on the computer and study and learn graphic design. And I did that. And through the course of that, I also discovered, as most of you probably have or will, that, with graphic design comes photography. They kind of go hand in hand. They're quite often paired together. And so I was working with photographs, and really that's what Photoshop is designed for. It's a photo editing program. So I started learning how to edit photographs in Photoshop. And then eventually I just said, well, let me get a digital camera and see if I can do this. And after the first, I had used cameras before. I grew up with film cameras and had taken photos, certainly, but had never taken a photo with the intent of making a photo. And so the first time I did that, it really just changed my life, and I absolutely fell in love with it and said, okay, I'm gonna treat this the same way I treated graphic design. I'm gonna go to the library. I'm gonna get as many books as I can. I'm gonna read. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna teach myself photography. And so I did that, and this is probably now 5 or 6 years into this journey of, little did I know I was becoming a visual artist. I really had, like I said, I didn't have a plan. I had a career in music, so I wasn't taking it seriously with the intent of, I'm going to do this for a living. I was just feeding my curiosity and and learning a skill that I thought was interesting and fun and exciting. But I'm sure you've heard the expression, when opportunity knocks, and that day came for me. I had a friend who was a retoucher at a local photography studio, and she said, I'm getting overloaded with work. I need somebody to come and help me do retouching. Can you do this? And like I said, I had gotten into photography. I'd learned really well how to use Photoshop at this point, years and years of practice with Photoshop. So I said, sure. And she called me in, and I literally walked in and did an entire day's worth of work with no idea that what I was going to be paid if I was hired. That one day turned into 2 days. Before I know it, I've been there a full week. It's Friday. And the owner of the company calls me into his office and says, so you're the new guy. I guess I got to hire you. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So I got this job out of the blue. And now keep in mind, I had never worked a day job, sit down job in my life. I've been a musician since I was 13. That's literally all I've ever done. So this was like weird to me, totally new territory, but it was really a good thing. It would turn out, because, it's difficult to get a job in anywhere if you don't have experience. And so getting that first job is really critical. So I started there. I started working as a retoucher, and I would 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, retouching senior portraits, popping zits, if you will, and cleaning up some really interesting photos. After about a year, my friend who had got me the job said, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I'm moving to California. I was in Ohio at the time, by the way. So she packs up and moves to Ohio. And the next thing I know, the boss comes to me and says, okay, we've got all these design projects. She was the designer. Now it's you. I had no idea she was even doing design. And all of a sudden, I'm the new senior designer. I'm the new only designer, designing everything for this company. And, of course, what did I say? I said, sure, I can do it. And I figured it out. And the projects just started coming down the pipeline. I was still doing retouching. I was training another person to do retouching. And I just started doing everything for this small to medium-sized company. And I'll share one quick funny story. This is, we're going to be talking about visual identity and branding, and it's related to marketing. And I wasn't learning anything about marketing through all of this journey. I was just strictly learning graphic design as an art form and learning how to make type in images look pretty on a page. So I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know why I was doing this stuff. It just, just doing it because I love it. So one of the first design projects, major design projects I did for this company was to design a brochure that they sent home to families to advertise services. And so I went into the boss's office, and he had an 11 by 17 piece of paper. He folded it in half, and he just started sketching. He said, okay, cover, it's going to have some kind of montage, and it's going to have our name, company name, just, scribbling stuff down. He opens it up, left side in panel, products, services, just loosely marking it out. Then he flips it over to the back, and real big, he writes call to action, exclamation point, and hands it to me and says, go make it. I'm like, oh, wow, that's not a lot to go on. Not sure what to do. And unfortunately, I didn't even have any of the previous brochures to look at. So I just went down with a clean slate and did the best that I could. And I came up with something that turns out was actually pretty much in line with what he wanted, but I had no idea what call to action meant. So I literally, on the back, in big bold type, in the most expressive type I could, I typed call to action, exclamation point. And I printed this thing out and I folded it. I was all proud, went up to show him, and he's looking, yeah, this is great. That's exactly what I wanted. He flips it over, sees call to action, and he literally, this guy, I'll save you the expletives, but it was, what the is that? Um, I'm like, what do you mean? It's exactly what you asked for. You wanted call to action. I put it on there. He said, no, I want you to write the call to action. And once again, I was embarrassed, but you got to put yourself in these situations. I said, I don't know what a call to action is. What do you mean? And this is a guy who had a degree in marketing and had an MBA. So, he sat me down and gave me, this is what marketing is from A to Z. And really opened my eyes. And so, okay, that was great. But at the end of that, I said, well, why do you want me to write the call to action? He said, you're going to do it. You're going to learn this. And so that was, little did I know, I was acquiring a skill that would come in very handy as a graphic designer, and that is copywriting. And you will find, as if you pursue a career in graphic design, one of the end places you can end up if you go in really into commercial graphic design is at ad agencies, where you'll find copywriters and graphic designers all working together. And sort of the upper tier for a graphic designer is art director, which is someone that really manages creative projects. And you've got to have experience in copywriting. You've got to understand photography. You've got to understand design. And so, I had no idea these were all like formative experiences that were sort of preparing me for this. So I wrote the call to action. I figured it out, and it was successful. And I worked at that company for about 5 years and really just had all kinds of things thrown at me, from building their website or rebuilding their website, building custom landing pages for email campaigns, designing emails, designing direct mail pieces, the brochure, envelopes. These are photo envelopes that when you send home to mom and dad, designing every aspect of that. So it was a lot. And I was very, very fortunate to have, a good relationship with a couple of different printing companies, and to be able to go and do press checks and really start to understand how offset printing works, and get straight from them, like, these are the type of files we're looking for. Here's the pitfalls. Here's the mistakes you made. Here's how to avoid that in the future. And a lot of that was not design. Nobody was talking about design. They were literally talking about production things that you need to be aware of. So, those are things that you have to learn one way or another. And if you're self-taught, you may learn it the hard way, but sometimes that's a great way to learn it because you don't often forget it. So let's fast forward. It's now 5 years at this company. I'm still like in love with photography and developing my photography skills along that way. I finally decide, you know what? I'm going to be a photographer. I pack up and move my wife and our cat and I to California, and I go to Brooks Institute, and I get a Bachelor of Arts in Professional Photography. And that's me on my Honda CRV there, taking a picture of the mountains near Mammoth, which I did for UCSB, actually. But we're not quite there yet. So I got my degree in professional photography, and I thought I'm going to be a photographer. And I did for several years. I ran a photography business here in Santa Barbara, and I did a lot of work in LA mostly, and did a lot of commuting. But as life would have it, when we moved here, my wife was 6 months pregnant, actually, and she gave birth to our son when I was in school. And it turned out that he had autism. He's on the autism spectrum. And so it turned our lives upside down, and it quickly became apparent that, running a photography business where you're gone, 80 hours a week is not going to be the best fit for our family. So I knew I needed to find another in-house job. And I've, had bounced back and forth, had been freelancing for many years successfully, had worked at, a couple of different places. And now here I am needing to find employment again. And I was lucky enough that there was a company in Santa Barbara hiring. It was a furniture company that makes custom adjustable beds. And they were hiring a photographer and a videographer. And I got that job under the guise that they knew I was a graphic designer as well. And within 6 months there, I was doing everything from print to web design to product photography to managing advertising shoots with photographers and creating video storyboards and things, and just doing everything. And so I got promoted to art director, which was exactly that kind of job title that I was telling you about, where you're someone that at this point in your career has a lot of solid design experience, understands photography, understands copywriting, and knows how to get that done with freelancers and how to coach freelancers to get the best results and to produce campaigns. And so that was a wonderful experience. I worked there for 3 or 4 years, and that led me right to UC Santa Barbara. That's when I saw the job opening here for senior web designer. And again, it's a kind of a misleading title, because I would say web design is probably only a third of what I do here. But it was the title that I needed to get in here, the way they had to phrase the job title. So let's jump into what I do at UCSB. I forgot there's an extra slide in here. By the way, I love cats, so I just threw that in here. These are my 2 cats. They're both Maine Coons and they're siblings. That's Magnus on the left and Madge on the right. And we rescued them from a Maine Coon rescue operation. They're just amazing. So what do I do at UCSB? I do design for web. That looks like a lot of different things on a daily basis. So on the left there, you see that's a custom website that we built for a multimedia news experience for UCSB has an operation in Moorea where students can go and do research at a coral reef, which is really exciting. We sent a photographer and a videographer down there to do comprehensive coverage. And then I was tasked with, here's a dump of photos and video and a writer who's going to write something, but she doesn't know where to start. Can you design something she can write to? And so it's, not always the way things work. Probably more often than not, you're handed some copy and some images and here's the story, make it visual or lay it out in a way that makes sense. This was create a compelling layout that will and tell us where to write and what type of things should be written. So that was a fun, exciting project. And that's one example of something we do that kind of every year in our office. We do some kind of big multimedia website like that. I do daily things for social media, like Facebook graphics to celebrate the National Arts and Humanities Month. Obviously, during the pandemic, we've had to shift to doing a lot of things COVID related, just towards our UCSB community to help make everyone aware of CDC guidelines and things like that. And so we kind of even developed a sub brand, which you can see very clearly there, where everything is in red, just to sort of make those stand out so that when you see them, you know this is COVID related messaging. And using a lot of iconography there. Instagram stories. I mean, it's the full gamut of everything for social and above and beyond that, we have a website theme that we've developed for Drupal. And so I'm constantly creating landing pages in that and helping other departments build out their web theme sites. So that's kind of what web design looks like for me. Print. We don't do a lot of print in our office specifically, but we partner with a lot of different campus departments to help them with print. This piece on the left is a trifold brochure for government relations to celebrate the technology that we are able to produce here. A lot of that with this brochure and other things were used in getting us a grant for the quantum, I can't remember what it's called. We basically got a grant from the government to be a quantum hub on the West Coast for quantum research. The Office of Research I work with constantly every year on their annual report, which is pretty simple, but it's a nice opportunity to pull out some infographics and develop some styles with those. Coastlines, I recently started designing Coastlines, the alumni magazine. That was fun. I've never designed a magazine before. I've designed some pretty robust newsletters that were multi-page. But again, can you do it? Sure. Um, then buy every magazine on the newsstand and start doing your homework and and figure it out. Campus signage, with this brand new visual identity, we've done a lot of campus signage. So I designed these banners, um, designed this. If you've ever been into the first floor of Cheadle for the letters and science academic advising, you've seen that whole display. That was my design and all my photography. I was very happy with that. We worked with the vendor, and those are printed on perforated nylon, I believe. So there's actually tiny little holes in that, so you can see through it. It lets light through, but when you're up close, you can see the image. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So those were some fun projects. Um, they also do a lot of photography on campus. I am, after all, a professional photographer. So it's a service that we've set up. We maintain a digital asset library, which is just a library of images that anyone on campus with a net ID can access and use, which I believe is all students as well. You have net IDs, so you could access this, and you'll learn more about this when we talk about the visual identity. But lots of pretty pictures of campus. I try to do really engaging portraits of faculty whenever I can. That's Joanne Kuchera Morin, who's in charge of the Alisphere, and that's inside the Alisphere. It was a really fun shoot. I love doing research photography. I mean, I just think the research that's going on here is incredible, and it makes a really compelling photographic subject, and you can do a lot of interesting things. That is some stem cell research, I believe. And then obviously student life. There's a constant need in all of our communications for great photos of student life. And we have great students. We have a beautiful campus. We have tons of natural light. It's almost too easy. All right, so that's kind of me and how I got here and why I'm talking to you today. Let's talk about the visual identity system. I want to go into, before we go into the actual system, I wanted to give you a little background of where we started before the visual identity system and how we arrived here and kind of what the process was, because that wasn't very well communicated to the community. And I know initially there were some questions about where did this come from? Who did this? So let's jump in and talk about that. This is where we started, and this is probably before most of your time here. You may recognize this. You may have never seen it. I don't know. This is what we referred to as the WAVE logo, and this was the logo that UCSB had for, gosh, I don't even know how many years. I've been here 5 years, at least 20, 25 years. We had this identity system. Of course, we have the University of California, Santa Barbara seal. We still maintain that seal. One thing that became apparent when I started was that there was a shift towards referring to the university as UC Santa Barbara, and you've probably heard that, and I try and say UC Santa Barbara as much as I can. The reason for that is because this university is rising in ranking and rising in exposure, and it's now a university that's known outside of California and even outside of the United States. So using UCSB, not everybody knows what SB means. Certainly not even outside of California, let alone in Asia or in South America. So, as we increase our global reach, we want to be very clear that we're communicating Santa Barbara. And also, when you say UCSB, it can very easily be confused with SD. So we made a push before we launched this new identity to do an interim word mark. And this was sort of to test the water, to see how receptive people would be on campus to it. And just to sort of set the stage for it. And so this is kind of an example of where we were in communications before the new identity rolled out. And you'll see lots of different colors, different versions of the blue all over the place, different typography. If you look here, you see a range of different logos. These are all things that we tried to address with the visual identity, and I'll show you how that came together. This is a sampling of website headers. All over the place, and so as a prospective student or a parent visiting different campus websites, sometimes it's hard to even tell if you're on a UCSB website at that point. So that was something we wanted to address. And then just looking at our peers, some of the different UC schools and University of California in general, you see that most of them are spelling out the name of the university, and they're using what we call a word mark. The one exception is UCLA, and we love to worship UCLA at this university for obvious reasons. It's an incredible university with an incredible history and lineage, but they also have like $1 trillion endowment and have the benefit of 150 years of getting their name out there, so they can go by UCLA. They also have the benefit of LA being this globally known city. We don't have that. And so it became apparent that it was time to stop following the UCLA lead and to go with the word mark route. So let's talk about the process. We did not do this solely in-house. We engaged with two partner agencies. One was a marketing firm and one was an advertising agency to do the design aspect of it. And so this is kind of some snapshots of them coming onto campus. They visited campus hundreds of times over a couple of years to do a variety of things. Here we were taking a campus tour and they were sort of just getting to know campus, the look and feel of campus, some of the obvious stats that you get from a campus tour, which is, we have this many degrees, we have the College of Creative Studies, yada, yada. They were taking photos of the unique architecture and sites on campus. We were looking at different buildings and the different areas of campus. We were even looking at the flora and the fauna, like what are the recognizable things that you see around campus? What are the colors that you see around campus? And all of this was feeding into some of the creative work that was going to be done. And then we convened a series of meetings over the course of 2 years with a group of campus leadership that included deans, faculty, staff, administrators, students. There were students involved in this and alums. And so we tried to pick as representatives from all different parts of the UCSB community to partake in this and to learn at an iterative approach every step of the way what we were thinking with in terms of the visual identity, in terms of the marketing and branding, because a big piece of this was also developing and fleshing out our mission statement and our brand pillars to really understand what it is that we want to communicate. So that takes me to where we are now. We have the new UC Santa Barbara brand. And so if you think back to a couple slides ago, that word mark, interim word mark that I shared, this is the new word mark, not too different, a couple of key differences, which we'll get into. And I'm going to pop out of my presentation now, and I want to take you over to our brand website, which is a resource that I highly encourage all of you to take a look at if you haven't already. We'll pop out and go over there. Can everyone see this?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, good. So this is our brand website, and this is what I'm going to take you through right now. I'm going to give you a high-level overview. I encourage you to read through this. What I encourage you to do most of all is to, it's here somewhere, is to go to this visual identity overview, download guidelines. Okay, this is a PDF document that we designed in collaboration with our agency. It's a 98-page document, and that's going to sound scary, but it's well worth reading every page of it and looking at it because it's full of guidelines for how to use the UCSB brand. But I think what is important in there and what we'll touch on here is that most of these guidelines are very, very simple things that, if done well, can turn bad design into good design. And it's these fundamentals of design. I was talking to Esther about this earlier. I have 20 some years now of experience in design. And a lot of times, for those of us who are self-taught, when we get excited about design, when we first, think of some of the first things you saw that got you excited about design, they were probably really wild, crazy typographic things and, really cool designs by big brands. And I'm here to tell you that that's like the 1% of design that you will do as a professional designer. The 99% of design that you will do is functional, clean communications that are designed to reach an audience and solve a problem and make it easy for people to read and ingest material. The really fun creative projects that you get to do are great, and we look forward to those. But even within those projects, there's still like this baseline aspect of it's got to be functional, it's got to be legible, it's got to be readable. I have to lead my user, my viewer through this document or this communication in a way that makes sense. And so that's what these visual guidelines do for us. They give us these fundamentals, these solid fundamentals, and it's these little details that we can look at that I think you all would get a lot of value from looking at. So let's just jump in. I'll just take you through the brand site very quickly here. University marks. I talked to you about the word mark. Let's look at some of the usage guidelines that we have for a word mark. And by the way, if you look at any brand guidelines for any brand, and you can do this too, like pick any brand that you like, go to Google Coca-Cola brand guidelines. You'll find a whole brand website devoted to it, and probably even a downloadable PDF and downloadable logos. Most brands have this stuff public now, and you'll see that probably all of them have guidelines around how to use the identity, and they're always going to have clear space, minimum size, relative size, and placement. These are like the fundamentals. And the reason for this is simple. One of the things that can make or break a design is proper margins around things, proper spacing of elements. And it's the most critical around the identity. We want the identity to be very clear. We want people to know who's communicating to them. And so for this reason, we have this very simple thing. Don't put anything closer to the word mark than the width of this X. And the beauty of doing it like this is that it scales, right? This UC Santa Barbara word mark can be the size of a billboard. It can be 40 feet long, and I still know what the minimum clearance is. Or it can be 1.25 inches on a small little brochure. And that's very easy to measure in your design program. You can literally draw a box around the U and make sure you're cool. So I do that all the time to double check myself. I mean, after you have been thinking this way for a while and working with it, you can kind of eyeball it, but it's very simple to check for yourself. The minimum size, for obvious reasons, we want it to be legible. It can't go any smaller than a certain size, otherwise it's not going to reproduce well on digital or in print. And so that minimum size is 1.25 inches or 120 pixels. And then the relative size and placement, looking at the size of your document, if you make it about 30% of that full document size, that's going to be a comfortable size that represents it well. Certainly you have this minimum if you need to go smaller for whatever reason. But as a standard to start with, this is a good place to start. And then where are the obvious places one would look for an identity system? Upper left, we read left to right, top to bottom in this country and in most of the Western world. So that's where your eye is going to go first when you look at a communication. Sometimes the use of the UC Santa Barbara word mark might be secondary to the title of a document. So maybe your title is here and you want to put your word mark somewhere else. These are some other obvious locations that you would put it. Another thing you'll see in all brand guidelines is what not to do. And these are good reminders. For those of you that are more savvy with design, some of this will be obvious, but we know that there are a lot of people on this campus that are tasked with doing design that don't really have a lot of experience and just have to do it as a part of their, job duties. And so this is geared for them. Don't rotate the word mark. You'll see as we go through this that this visual identity is really made up of, good grids and really sharp lines, a lot of straight lines. We're not putting things on an angle. If you look at the University of California guidelines, they have a lot of things that are at 45-degree angles and bursts of color, like sun rays beaming through things. And whereas we're alluding to the UC brand by using blue and gold, as every UC school is tasked to do, we're also differentiating ourselves by having clean lines. So don't rotate, don't deconstruct the word mark. You think of this, a lot of times people see this and they go, oh, they just typed it out. It's not. It's actually a file. It's an EPS file. It's a PNG. It's an SVG, and it is a flattened piece of artwork. And so while we don't call it a logo, we call it a word mark. It is one unified piece, and it should never be broken up. You don't want to stretch it. That's a rookie thing. You guys all know that, right? Hold shift. Actually, they changed it. It drives me crazy. They changed it in Photoshop to now don't hold shift if you want to constrain. It drives me crazy. I had to reverse it. Don't change the size relationship. Don't stack it. Don't fill it with an image. Don't apply a gradient to it. All these things just sort of take away from the dignity of it. It should be easy to read and legible, and it should be eye-catching. And part of the reason for this too is we want it to be used consistently, because the more people that use it, the more it gets out there and the more recognizable it is. And you want people to recognize official communications from the university, because that's how you build trust with your audience, that they know that this is coming from the university. And so that's the reason why we have guidelines. That's the reason why we want consistent usage. So that's the word mark. Pretty basic stuff, but the starting point of everything. Go back here to, let's go to color. Because one of the things that you saw in one of those early slides of, where we were, you saw lots of different blues and different colors all over the place. And part of that was because we didn't give anyone a system of colors to use. All we had before this exercise was blue and gold. And that can be really difficult to be a designer with two colors and one typeface. You can do it, but it's pretty limiting. So the purpose of this expanded color palette is to give a lot more options so that people can be more creative and can build more dynamic designs, but also we can still we can all rally and say, you know what, we're all going to use that same navy blue. So that when I see that navy and I see that word mark, I know it's official UCSB communications. Um, so we've changed the blue and gold slightly. It's a little bit of a deeper navy than it was. It's a little bit of a more vibrant gold. These other colors, remember I showed a slide with the team walking around taking photos and really looking at the environment. That's where they got these colors from. They literally took photos of campus and they went around and they picked colors from their photos and said, this is what you see when you're on campus. Obviously we have the ocean. So we have these kind of ocean colors, aqua and sea green. We have a lot of, green spaces on campus. The coral, this is an interesting color that was asked for actually by a faculty member that said, we need something like a sunset or something in there. And so we all decided that we would add something that was not quite sunsetty, but coral, and also alluded to the ocean. And by the way, I mean, these have names also for a reason to sort of evoke, where they were plucked from. We have those misty days on campus. We all know where that color comes from. Clay, it's kind of like clay and sandstone are these versions of sand that we see on our favorite beaches. And every toolkit needs to have some version of gray and black and white, obviously. We do have a digital color palette as well. One of the things that we have to be concerned with on this campus is ADA compliance for people with disabilities. And so anytime we're designing anything for the web, obviously we have to be ADA compliant with AA standard, which means there has to be a certain color contrast that we meet, that we're adding alt tags to images. There's a whole list of things, but you'll see some darker colors in here so that if you wanted to reverse type white type on this lighter coral, it doesn't meet our accessibility standards. So we've got some additional colors there that you can grab. And this is really handy for anyone that's doing any web design. You can grab your hex code really quickly right there. Obviously you can pop that into Photoshop as well, which is a lot easier than grabbing the RGB numbers, but all of the stuff is there. And then, similarly, we've got the incorrect usage. Don't create gradients. This is really kind of specifically for this brand because it's a new brand. We didn't want people to immediately start blending colors because it takes away from, we want our constituents to get to know the colors. And as soon as you start using gradients, then you're getting, obviously in between here are colors that are not part of the palette. So I think this is something that will soften over time, but we're trying to go a couple of years of saying, hey, look at our color scheme, look at our color palette, look at our consistent usage, learn these colors, trust. So that's why that's in there. And don't create tints for the same reason. You're just creating offshoot colors. Don't create new colors. Hopefully we gave you enough. I hope so. Don't assign multiple colors to individual letter forms. Just for the most part, don't do that anyway, no matter what you're doing, unless there's a really compelling reason to do it. There could be, but be careful with that one. I'll say that's dangerous. Don't set text in poorly contrasted color. You can see what's wrong with that from a mile away. And don't use 4 or more full bleed colors. Just don't overwhelm your designs with color. We went from having only 2 colors. Now we have a bunch. Let's not go crazy. We can still keep to 2 or 3 different colors. And also this says full bleed color. So this is like edge to edge color, big swaths of color. So that's kind of the way that works. I realize we're running short on time here. I'm gonna have to speed it up. There's not gonna be time for questions. Typography. This is my favorite part. I love typography. And we have 2 really beautiful new typefaces. Avenir is our main typeface. This is a standard sans serif font. It's, kind of a derivative of Helvetica. There's a lot of fonts out there that are like that. It's not too much of a departure from Frutiger, which was the previous font we had. But the nice thing about this is that this comes standard on all Mac computers, which most people in design are using a Mac. So if you have a Mac, you have Avenir, and you can go, and there's, goes all the way from light to black. So a lot of variance in the weights, and you can do a lot. I mean, here's some, even if you just look at the way these guidelines are laid out, you get eye candy for design, just this is designed beautifully already, pairing different size type and different weight type. We do have a secondary typeface product. This is a slab serif. So it's a little bit different than your traditional Times New Roman kind of sans serif, where in a slab serif, we've got these really sort of straight serifs. And I think this is an interesting choice, and it was chosen to sort of nod to Minion, which was one of the previous typefaces that we used. And you see that this is what the UC in the word mark is made up of, product. And so it's sort of like 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the future. And this is a nice typeface. As I said, it's a secondary typeface, so we don't really use it all that often. We use it, you know, for display mostly. So you would see that in like a big heading or maybe a pull quote or something like that. And you'll see some examples as we go through here. Headline copy in Avenir, subhead copy in product, or reversed, headline in product, subhead in Avenir. So these are nice little examples. And you'll see these examples much bigger when you download the PDF. So that's why I highly recommend you download that PDF. So a lot of this information here is just kind of showing different ways that you can use these typefaces together. And like I said, these are really some of the fundamentals of design that will carry you through a career in design, is understanding how to pair different weights of type and different sizes to create differentiation. One of the things that I see from young designers and people that aren't particularly design savvy when they lay out things, like even just if someone makes a Word document, you'll see like everything is the same size and the same weight. And it's just like me talking like a robot. There's only so much of that you can listen to before you tune out. And there's only so much of that you can actually focus on visually. And so the whole point of type design is to guide the user through the type and make it, give it an order and a hierarchy. Tell me how to read it is what this does for you. So you'll see lots of examples of this, and there's some specific information on leading and tracking. And like I said, most of this is just, this is a comfortable leading. If you're not familiar with leading, leading is the space between lines of type. This is a comfortable leading setting. And as we go into deeper here, we've got actual body sizes and leading sizes. So this is, if you follow this, you'll make nice legible type. And that's kind of the goal, is like for any kind of visual identity guidelines. Follow these guidelines, and this is the kind of stuff you don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is how you make a nice paragraph of legible type. And we've got some different formulas here. If your type is 6, it should be leaded at 7.5 and tracked at 10. If it's 7, you go 9 and 10, right? So we've got these formulas here. And once you play around with this and you use this system a lot, it starts to, like I said, it's with other things, it starts to become second nature, and you can see it by eye. And then the same thing for product, all those same kinds of settings. Product being a slab serif can be difficult to read if it's tracked too tightly or if it's leaded too tightly. So you've got to be really careful, and these are good settings to go by. For people that don't have access to Avenir, we do have a substitute, which is Century Gothic, which is anyone that has the Microsoft Office suite has this. It's pretty ubiquitous on computers. So it's similar to Avenir, similar enough. So we use this in our email designs. We use an email client, MyEmma, and we have access to that. So that's what we use in emails. Again, here's all of your don't do's. Don't set type in all caps. Don't apply more than the recommended leading. You can see how that starts to look weird. These sentences don't look connected anymore. Too much tracking, tough to read. Don't set all of your copy in product, because that's not our primary typeface. Here we go. This is exactly what I talked about. Do not make headings without contrast. This is everything the same size. It's monotone, hard to read. This is so much harder to read than something like this. So, that's, again, really good tips in there. Photography, this is a real quick one. I mentioned that we have a digital asset library. This is, I contribute photos to here every year, or every 2 years. The University of California Office of the President sends a photographer to campus, and we do an exhaustive 2 or 3 day shoot. So there's a ton of great high-res, beautiful photos of every aspect of campus in here. And you can find that link to it right here. You sign in with your NetID and you can browse and download and use those. Even if you're just looking for photos to play around with, I noticed you said you're doing some design projects. Use photos in here. Feel free to use these. They're like free stock photos, and they're high quality, and you can play around with laying type and colors over photos. You'll also see within the guidelines, there's some additional information on pairing colors with photos, and how to pair 2 different photos together, what to look for in photos. Photos are full of colors too, especially our on-campus photography. It's quite often very vibrant and colorful. And so those are things to think about when you're pairing photos with color. So we have a number of tools and templates on here, which you're also welcome to take advantage of. Web fonts is for anyone who's building a campus website. You can actually access this website uses Avenir and product. We have a license for that. We have a web theme, which departments on campus are starting to use um, to rebuild their websites in. And so basically it matches the look and feel of this site. And I showed you that slide earlier, which showed the range of different website headers across campus and how difficult it was to discern what's what. We've tried to standardize this, and that's what the web theme does, is it gives everyone a very consistent looking header so that we realize that we're on a UC Santa Barbara property, web property, and then what you do between that and the footer is up to you. So that's a nice thing. We've got social media templates here. We do have an icon library that you can access. These are all created by one artist, so that's a nice family of icons that all feel like they're from the same person. We've got some basic email templates, different print documents in here, Word document templates and whatnot, video tools. If you're making videos and you want to do branded lower thirds and things like that, there's templates in there. And then we recently just launched this, which is a whole new best practices on social media. And so this is more around marketing and social media strategy, but if you're interested in that, I would check that out. I forgot one thing. There is one thing within University Marks that I didn't mention, and that is our primary word mark lockups. And I'll just go over this quickly. When I was talking about website headers, we developed this system because we wanted to bring more consistency to the way departments also refer to themselves. And you saw that one slide that had so many different logos. And we went through a long period on this campus where every department had a logo. And I think, it does a disservice to the effort to brand a university when everyone has a separate logo and we mistreat the name of the university and we're being inconsistent. What this system aims to do is to make the department more prominent by setting it in product and making it larger, but it also always shows how that department is related to UC Santa Barbara. And so if a department is using this in their communications, they very quickly show that they're part of UC Santa Barbara. They're linking to the master brand. And this has been a long effort to get this adopted. I personally make these for every department. I've made 380, I think, lockups over the course of 3 years in a variety of formats, in PMS, in CMYK, in RGB, as SVGs, as EPS files, as PNGs. And so it's been a tremendous effort, but it's been really great. And we're now seeing more and more consistent usage of this all across campus. And that's really what this effort was for. We wanted to relaunch and refresh the UC Santa Barbara brand. We wanted to tell that brand story in a more compelling and consistent way. And we wanted to increase adoption of these standards across campus. And so far, I think it's been a success. We're kind of coming up on time, but I do want to leave some time for questions. So it's probably a good place to stop. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask? Or have they already? And there's another aspect to this. I'll just say, well, if you're typing questions right now, when you read the guidelines, there is a sort of preface that goes into more of the story and the mission. And this is good stuff to read too. Every brand guidelines is going to have this too. And this is what I showed you was strictly a visual presentation of our brand, but brand is not just visual. It's the way we communicate. It's the experience. Every time someone experiences a connection to our brand, whether that be through a website, through an in-person meeting, through a campus tour, a video, or seeing a photo in a magazine, anything, those are all touch points where you engage with the brand. And we want to make sure visually that we're telling the story, but also when we're writing copy, when we're talking to people. And so these are the kind of brand pillars that we discovered through this whole process of, like I said, 2 years plus of interviewing as many people as we could on campus and really getting to know what people on this campus and what prospective students, parents, and all these different constituencies what they think of the university. So this is what we've landed on. This is just a really nice read. We're all gauchos here, right? So we love this university. This is a nice thing to read, and hopefully you agree that it's an inspirational environment. It's academically rich and it's a socially rewarding experience, and that obviously there's excellence. We see that in our rankings. So
We have a couple questions, Matt, in the chat.
let's go
We
for
have a
it.
question from Bianca, and she's asking, what platforms do you use to create mockups, and what works best with your workflow?
That's a great question. Depends on what the mockup is for. For websites, I use Adobe XD. Um, I started out making websites in Photoshop, which is the way most people did. And the more you use Photoshop for type and for page layout, the more you realize that's not what it's designed for. Adobe has added a lot of features over the years to try and make it sort of do everything. But I quickly started using Illustrator to mock up a lot of website designs. And then obviously when XD came out, I've used Sketch as well. But I'm a fan of using all Adobe software because it's shareable amongst partners on campus because we're all connected. We're all using the same Creative Cloud. And I like Adobe XD for web design because I can create a URL that uploads it to the Adobe servers, and I can shoot out a URL to however many people need to see that, and they can take a look at it. And then I've also been able to, create my own templates within there that follow this look and feel, because all new websites that we're designing now are based on this look and feel. And so we're just sort of designing different guts within here, if you will. And occasionally they're, like that one multimedia website from Maria that I showed, that was all designed in XD. But if you're talking about print design, a lot of times I do mock up things in print before I dive in. And, very often that can be, when we were in person, sometimes that was just on paper and pencil. And I still love doing that, just doing a really quick, rough sketch of, maybe we could do something like this and it would look like this. Sometimes you get the opportunity to do a print project where there is no mandate and someone says, I don't know, we're just going to make something. What should we make? That's a really fun, exciting territory to be in, because then it's like, well, does it have to be a specific size? Could it be square? Could it be round? Could it be trifold? Could it have four folds? Could it have a pocket? Then you start actually, in those instances, I like really playing around with a piece of paper and folding things and actually looking at how something folds and what the experience is of opening it. And then that's really the best way to get a sense of any kind of brochure that you're designing, for sure, is to have an actual piece that's folded and scribble some content on there and look at how am I going to experience this as someone that picks this up. So that's kind of it. Hopefully that answered your question.
I know we're running short on time, so I think for the remaining questions I see in the chat, there's like 2 of them. We'll take those and then we can end there. But Celine had a question, and I know I can answer part of it. She asked, has it been difficult for departments to adopt this new visual system? And how do you deal with departments when they create print web visuals or anything that don't adhere to the brand guidelines? I know for the first part, like definitely we've had a lot of pushback. I probably should have prefaced, I'm actually an intern in the OPAC office. So I know it's like a constant battle, I would say, throughout the year. We've been trying to push departments to be on the same page and to adopt the same visual identity there. But Matt can definitely speak more to how you deal with it when departments don't want to listen.
Yeah, well, I shared the Wave logo, and I said that, that was kind of the identity system we had for 25 or 30 years. And because of the lack of central support and central resources and really robust guidelines, this university has become very siloed and kind of like the Wild West, where out of necessity, departments have had to do what they've had to do to create the kind of communications that they needed to create. And so, and for many of them, they've become, just they've dug their heels in, if you will, and said, no, this is the way we do things. So I hate to use the word brand police. That's what we are, but we're doing it in, we're trying to be as educational about it as possible. And really, I don't want to tell someone how to design something. I don't want to tell someone that they have to use this word mark. I want to explain to them why they would want to and why it makes sense and why it benefits them. And so a lot of that is educating people and going back to the fundamentals of what branding is and why branding is important. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people. I reference Nike all the time. I feel like Nike is a brand that everybody knows. Um, you know, and you can, most of us would probably never hesitate to buy a pair of Nike shoes, wondering whether they were good quality or not. You know, it's almost synonymous. It's just such a, it's so stuck into our culture now. And even the Nike swoosh, like Nike could run around with that swoosh and nothing else, and you would know it was Nike. The challenge I have for some people that are really stuck in with the logo in a certain department, as I say, take, you know, let's say chemical engineering. I don't even know if they're still using a logo, but let's say take the word chemical engineering off your logo and just run with that emblem and tell me how far you get with that. And obviously they're not going to get very far because they don't actually have real brand equity. And that's something that's difficult to develop and takes a lot of money and a lot of time. And that's something that if we can explain to people that that's the mission that we're on right now. You know, we had to update this identity. It hadn't been touched in 30 years. And in many ways, the world is moving on. Technology is moving on, and there's just newer and better best practices and newer ways of doing things. So we had to update it. We want everyone to come along on this journey with us. And this is the reason it's important, is that we're trying to build this brand. And the more people that get familiar with the UC Santa Barbara brand and the more you adhere to it, the more it's going to help you get your messages out, the more it's going to help you reach prospective students, whatever your goal is, whoever your audience is. So it's, I would say, I think now it's less people fighting against it and more people saying, well, I don't have the resources. And that's unfortunately a problem campus wide, is that we just don't have, you know, I'm one of maybe 10 or 15 designers, like actual employed graphic designers on campus for a population of 20,000 students. And I don't even know how many faculty. I mean, this is a big university to have that few professional designers making communications. It's kind of shocking, you know, and when I talk to colleagues at other universities, like, I mean, I know I've mentioned UCLA and they're a much bigger university, but their central communications office has 98 people. We have 15. So, you know, those are challenges that we're not going to get over. And that's why you see on this website that we have lots of tools and templates. And when I approach people that are having trouble adopting the brand or maybe making some mistakes with the brand, it's never out of, hey, you're doing that wrong. It's let me help you, because I know that you're understaffed and this may not be your area of expertise. And let me see if I can teach you, you know, and like I said, some of those things that I touched on in the brand guidelines, they're little nuances that are very simple. And once you open your eyes to that and you start to see that, you can really make beautiful, simple designs. And like I said, I mean, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but 99% of the design you do is going to be like, this is not the most exciting website you've ever seen, but it's clean. It's pretty, it's easy to navigate. It uses beautiful photography. You know, it gets a vibe across. It looks professional, and it's telling our story. And not everything is going to be wild and crazy in the world of graphic design. Those are the you know, very few projects that you do. So if I can get people that are maybe aren't designers or just starting out to sort of learn these very basic fundamentals, they can take their game way up and make really incredible designs that fit well with our brand and follow the guidelines.
That's a great answer.
Thanks.
There are so many. If there are other questions, I want to be cognizant of time here. I can definitely
I'm
forward
happy
them
to
over
stay on.
to, yeah.
It's up to you. If anyone needs to leave, my evening is free, or I'm happy to answer them by email too, whatever you want to do.
We can end on one last one. I think Bianca had asked, I think this is relevant for more people too. In your opinion, what is the best way to self-teach?
That's a great question. Whatever way works for you, you've got to get to know yourself as a learner. It's really interesting. I'm a self-taught graphic designer, but I went to college for photography. Why? Why didn't I just teach myself photography? Well, I did, actually. I mean, by the time I went to Brooks, I had already been running a photography business and was doing professional work. Um, what I got out of Brooks, and the reason that I went there, was because I wanted to learn business and I wanted to learn from other photographers that really knew how to run a business. And not to say that I didn't learn about photography, obviously I did. But I think the best way to self-teach is going to be an individual journey. I used the internet. I went to the library. Um, that may work well for you. I mean, certainly it's possible to learn anything on YouTube now. You know, I mean, you can learn how to install a toilet, or you can learn how to design a brochure. Yeah, like anything. It's all, there's a tutorial, there's a video for everything. As students, I believe you have access to LinkedIn Learning. That's a great way. Go through those and download the, a lot of those, they let you download the full InDesign package and you build the thing along with the instructor. Those are great. I've done a few of those. That's really fun. But if you don't learn well like that in isolation, then find a graphic designer in your area. Start Googling graphic designers and in your area. Find one and say, hey, I'm a student. Can I ask you questions? Can I buy you lunch or buy you coffee? Can I talk to you? And get to know them. And a lot of the arts really are apprenticeships, and they need to be. It's very true for music. I will say people go to music school and they learn how to play music, and then when they go to be a professional musician, they have to start over at square one, because it's just, you can't, there's certain things you can't learn in school. So even whatever your field of study is here, you're going to, in a certain sense, start at square one when you get into the workplace, and you're going to have to learn a lot. So if you're interested in design and you want to approach it that way, yeah, reach out to someone. And I've always said, if someone wants to buy me coffee, I'm more than happy to sit down and talk to them. And if someone's really curious and they want to learn about design, I'm happy to share my expertise. And you'll find that most professionals in almost any industry will be like that with a student who's hungry enough. So again, I guess the answer is however you learn best. I like reading books. I like looking at books. Communication arts, I don't know if you're familiar with that. I guess I can stop sharing my screen now. Communication arts, you can get these. You can get these in the UCSB library. This is the Bible for creatives. This is the industry magazine where all of the best work, the best of the best, gets shared in here. And they have, I don't know, 4 or 5 issues a year, so they're really thick. This is the typography annual. There's an illustration annual, there's a design annual, there's an interactive annual, there's an advertising annual. It's literally the best work across commercial industries that you'll see. So that's incredible eye candy. And also, for everything, they tell you who was the producer, who was the ad agency, who was the art director, who was the designer, who was the photographer. Find those people, man. That guy's doing amazing work. Holy crap, I want to learn how to do that. There's his name. Google him. Of course, he's got a website. Send an email, ask questions. Don't be afraid. Because the thing that I think is interesting about art and what I've learned about art, and it's true for music, it's true for visual art. I could teach you how to do everything that I do. Exactly. I can tell you everything I know, and you'll still never be me. And so you're not going to compete with me because I'm unique. I do my own thing, and you're never going to recreate what I do. It's true for music. I could teach someone everything I know about playing drums, and they're never going to sound like me, and you're never going to design like me. So I'm happy to share all of it. And I think most professionals would be like that as well. So if you're hungry, go ask for it. If you like YouTube, there's no better time than during this pandemic to kick your feet up and spend all day on YouTube learning how to do graphic design or web design or coding or whatever you fancy. Hopefully that answers it.
Okay. At this point, I think we can call it for now. If anyone in the call has additional questions, if you send them to me or to SB Creative Lab, I will definitely forward them over to Matt. I'm sure he'll be really happy to answer those questions too.
Absolutely happy. Did I see, was someone raising their hand? I don't know if that was Madeline raising her hand. I thought.
I don't. Oh, I think she was letting us know she had to leave early.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to. Actually, before we go, I'll share my screen one last time so you all get this, and back to my presentation, because I do have a last slide, which is my contact info.
Awesome.
No, not share. Present. There you go. Feel free to connect with me. You can add me on Instagram. Twitter is dumb. I don't use it. I have a YouTube page if you want to see me playing drums, and I do have a website. And I'm in the LDAP. So if you're in Gmail with your student email and you just type Matt Perko, you'll find me. I should pop up for my UCSB email. It's just matt.perko@ucsb.edu. But please feel free to contact me any which way works for you. And I'm happy to discuss design, photography, music, and anything else I might pretend to know about.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Okay, and I will end just with a couple of slides. I'll make this really brief because I know we're over time. So our next upcoming event is next Thursday, and it's actually just a studio time where we're sitting in call on Discord. If you want to tackle the graphic design or illustration challenge that we've been running this month, that is a great time to hop on call with some other students. And if you want to get feedback, you have the opportunity to share your screen and get instant feedback that way. But you can pop in and out. It's not strictly an hour or whatnot. It's to your leisure, really. We'll begin at 6:30, so some people will be online there. And last but not least, stay connected with us. And so this recording might be long. I know, I mean, you guys are all on this call already, but if you're curious about previous recordings or about the slide deck that Matt just went through, we'll have all that information up online at sbcreativelab.com. So definitely, I'll refer you that way if you'd like to see more resources. And with that, that ends our workshop for today. So thank you so much for coming out. I know it went a little bit over time, but there was so much great content that was covered. So yeah, thank you again to everyone.
Thanks, everyone.